Good afternoon. I'm Randall Morgan. I'm the Executive Director of the W. Montague Cobb NMA Health Institute. Welcome to our annual Cobb Lecture and Symposium. The title of our symposium this year is An Introduction to the NIH Program of All of Us Research and Our Role in the Launch of a Precision Medicine Cohort. And I have the pleasure of introducing to you our keynote speaker, the Cobb Lecturer. Each year, this is our 14th symposium, and each year we have a distinguished speaker. And our speaker today is Dr. Richardson-Heron. And she is the Chief Engagement Officer of NIH All of Us Research Program. And she has been involved with this effort since its inception, and last year was one of the speakers on the program the Cobb Institute had in Philadelphia on precision medicine. During the past year, the Cobb Institute has partnered with NIH with the All of Us project, and we have worked directly with Dr. Richardson-Heron, and it's been really very enlightening in terms of what we've been able to accomplish, but also I think rewarding in that we've established some relationships with NIH that will certainly stand the Cobb Institute and hopefully NIH in good stead as we go forward. We expect that there will be individuals who will be coming in and joining our session. But there are so many different events going on, and we're on a timed basis today, and it's absolutely necessary that we start on time. So we have the bios that are here for you to review, and certainly I'm not going to take time to read a bio. I think the most important thing I can do now is to welcome Dr. Dara Richardson-Heron to the podium for the Cobb Lecturer.
Good afternoon. And thank you so much for that kind introduction, Dr. Morgan. I'm just delighted to be back with the National Medical Association family and the Cobb Institute. As some of you know, and as Dr. Morgan mentioned, I had the great honor to participate in the Cobb Symposium last year, and truly, truly honored to be the Cobb Lecturer today. I just joined the National Institutes of Health team about a year ago. And it's just amazing how much progress has been made since then. Our partnership with Cobb and NMA has grown and deepened, and our program has officially launched. And we are now off and running on this exciting journey we call the All of Us Research Program. And I couldn't be more excited about where we are. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Mitchell for all of her work. As the Chief Engagement Officer for the All of Us Research Program, I work with a great team of people that has been building relationships from coast to coast to help us get the word out about the All of Us Research Program and really explain what we hope to achieve with the program. And we could not be more thankful for our partnership with NMA and Cobb. Indeed, as mentioned during the plenary session this morning, all of our partners, whether it be physicians, nurses, hospitals, medical organizations, faith-based organizations, or other grassroots community organizations, they are critical to helping us achieve our goals, because we know for sure that when we succeed in achieving our mission, it will be due in large part to the diverse, transparent, respectful, bi-directional, culturally sensitive, and impactful relationships and partnerships we've developed across the nation. And I know you may think that I'm biased, and perhaps I am, but I very objectively believe that the All of Us Research Program has the potential to change the face of health and healthcare as we know it. Unlike a single research study focused on a specific disease or population, the All of Us Research Program will serve as a national research resource to inform thousands of studies covering a wide variety of health conditions. And most importantly, this program has the potential to help us all learn more about the steps we can take to get closer to eliminating the many unfortunate health disparities plaguing the African American community and many other communities of color in our nation. Now, as we look at it, precision medicine is an exciting approach to improving health, treating disease, and finding cures. It acknowledges that each person is unique, our habits, our environment, and our biology, and that the interaction of these factors greatly impacts our health. And rather than using the one-size-fits-all approach, precision medicine aims to deliver the right treatment for the right person at the right time, to keep people healthy longer. And we're all familiar with the precision nature of eyeglasses, hearing aids, insulin pumps, and blood typing, each tailored specifically for us as unique individuals. But we need many more examples like this. And ultimately, precision medicine may produce more accurate diagnoses, earlier detection, and better prevention strategies and treatment choices. Precision medicine can be a really radical shift in how each of us can achieve the best care possible based upon our unique lifestyle, environment, and biological makeup. That's the crux of our program. It can help all of us. But to ensure that it does, we need for all of us, not just some of us, to be involved, literally and figuratively. We mean all of us. And as some of the most trusted professionals in our nation, we really need the help of our physicians. So I've had so many people ask me, why now? Why now? Why are we taking on such a bold initiative like All of Us right now? Well, the answer is simple. The time is right. And I love the NMA conference theme, the urgency of now. The physicians this morning highlighted health disparities in the African American community in prostate cancer, diabetes, and obesity. And the real question really should be, why not now? Because disparities are rampant, so we must do whatever we can right now to create a culture of health equity. With augmented intelligence like IBM Watson and other incredible advances, we are in a space as a society where we have technology that can keep up with the complexities of our lives in real ways. We have devices that can collect and crunch data at the scale of our health records. We have progressed in our personal equipment and our personal engagement with our health, from apps to food trackers to an investment in our health more than ever before. We have the tools to translate big data into actionable insights, as quoted by Dr. Ree this morning, and the science is there as well. We now have a greater understanding of and appreciation for the connection between lifestyle, genetics, and health. Dr. Ganda this morning shared the results of a longitudinal study that showed how lifestyle changes, such as exercising 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week, can be significantly more effective in diabetes management than taking medications. So that's why the All of Us research program is working to bring together 1 million or more volunteers from across the United States to donate longitudinal health information for research. Now, those of you who heard Dr. Eric Dyson speak this morning, you know that we no longer say clinical trials because, in his words, African Americans don't like the word trials. So we're going to have to come up with another word. But among many other things, researchers may be able to use the information we collect to identify steps that we can all take to stay healthy much longer, to find health conditions early when they are often most treatable, to better understand why different people respond differently to various medications and treatments, and also to develop more effective, personalized, and precise treatments. You know, our program is spearheaded by the National Institutes of Health, and it's a cornerstone of the Precision Medicine Initiative that was launched by President Barack Obama in January 2015 with the goal of accelerating and advancing the promises of precision medicine. And while I think we can all agree that many things have changed since President Barack Obama's time, I'm pleased to report that our program has strong bipartisan support from Congress. And let me be clear, I wouldn't be standing before you today, and I also know that Drs. Morgan, Drs. Brown, Dr. Mitchells, and Dr. Price and other leaders wouldn't jeopardize NMA's and Cobb Institute's trusted brand and reputation as the largest and oldest national organization representing African American physicians and their patients in the United States to partner with us if they didn't believe in the incredible value and promise of the program, particularly for individuals of color who have been historically underrepresented in biomedical research. Now, our program mission is simple but very bold: to accelerate health research and medical breakthroughs, enabling individualized prevention, treatment, and care for all of us. We aim to create a new model of research based on collaboration amongst researchers, providers, and participants, which requires nurturing those relationships. And we also want to deliver a hugely valuable, rich resource of data, which will be accessible in unprecedented ways. And finally, we will catalyze a robust ecosystem of researchers and funders who we hope are hungry to use it and support it. Now, as we learn more, the All of Us research program may also raise some fundamental and provocative questions. For example, how will it change how we think about race as a genetic construct? Will our research help us discover that what we think of as race, especially as it relates to health, is no longer a useful scientific concept, and we should focus instead on ancestry, which, unlike race, refers to one's genetic heritage? There's a very interesting article in Scientific American just this week entitled, quote, "Effort to Diversify Medical Research Raises Thorny Questions of Race," end quote. Well, I think the jury's still out, but either way, these are very important questions for which we need answers that can only be obtained with more diversity in research. And I'm excited about the potential of our program to help with that. So, as Dr. Morgan mentioned, I have been involved with this program since its inception. I was invited by the President of Barack Obama's administration to serve as an advisor, and now I'm on the team. But I love these values, and it's really been very amazing to see how much progress we've made based on these core values, which we don't deter, we don't waver on these values. But more importantly, though, as a physician, as an advocate, and as a 21-year and counting breast cancer survivor, I am both hopeful and enthusiastic about the progress yet to be made in healthcare. And with your help, we hope to transform the future of health, to move from a time where healthcare is largely focused on treating chronic diseases to a time when we shift our focus and attention to prevention. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine a future where illness can be prevented and the burden of disease minimized. Imagine a world where everyone participates in the development of new medical discoveries and therapies, and, most importantly, everyone benefits. Again, I've seen this healthcare system from many angles, as a physician, a patient, an advocate, and a caregiver who has felt the stinging loss of far too many loved ones leaving this earth way too soon because of chronic and often preventable conditions like heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, and many other devastating illnesses. So I'm totally committed to changing the healthcare narrative in our community, and I know that each of you are too. So what's the promise for participants? So participants are the heart and soul of the All of Us research program. We are hopeful that our program will provide participants with an opportunity to help fight disease and improve the health of future generations. We've all benefited from those who came before us and participated in research, so it's important that we too pay it forward. And the participants will have a chance to learn about their own health, including genetic information, personalized risk factors and exposures, and over time, we hope to advance the availability and access to increasingly rich health records. And as we all know, for various reasons, which I'll touch on a bit later, many communities have neither been well represented in nor optimally benefited from health research and advances. And we want the All of Us research program to be a game changer in that regard. We want to make this an opportunity to ensure that every community reaps the benefits of scientific discoveries. So what's the promise for researchers? For researchers, longitudinal data is a dream data set. This database will be diverse, and we will have a rich set of data, including surveys, blood and urine analysis, genetic information, environmental information, and also electronic health records. We are building an infrastructure to allow access to both raw and curated data, and also clean data, which will be kept in a very secure environment. And our infrastructure will allow researchers to collaborate with both patients and other researchers to accelerate breakthroughs and leverage innovations. And very importantly, we want to democratize research such that a diversity of researchers have access to the data, not just those connected to major medical centers. So what's the promise for providers? For healthcare providers, the research gained will allow for more effective and efficient care. Research conducted using all of us data could help illuminate and help us all better understand the impact of environment and lifestyle factors on health. We will have a deeper understanding of risk factors and treatment response for diverse populations. And this new knowledge will hopefully help us to decrease the need for what I call sometimes trial and error medicine, and help us minimize the dangerous and potentially life-threatening side effects and promote much more treatment compliance. You know, long before I was a physician, I remember sitting at my grandmother's feet trying to convince her to take her blood pressure medicines, and she'd say, "Baby, the medicine just doesn't make me feel right." And I now know that there was likely something to that, because the medications used back then and now have never been treated on diverse populations, never been tested on diverse populations. Our program has the potential to be transformative in that respect. As Dr. Brown said this morning, we've all prescribed medications to our patients, and in most cases, we had no idea who participated in those clinical trials. That needs to change, right, Dr. Brown? So our program has the potential to be transformative in so many ways, but there are 3 additional core areas I'll highlight for you now. Our transformational approaches to diversity, participants, and data access. So to be clear, our mission is not just to find 1 million or more people to volunteer and share medical information with the program. Our mission is to find 1 million or more people who reflect the rich diversity of our country, who will not only participate in our program, but create an opportunity to change health and healthcare for the benefit of everyone. And that's why we want everyone to consider participating in the All of Us research program. At this time, we are seeking adults 18 years and older, of all races and ethnicities, sexual orientations, and socioeconomic statuses to join us in this unprecedented effort. And regardless of the current health status, we want everyone to partner with us. And we are seeking people from every corner of the United States to join, because we know that where a person lives has the potential to have an enormous impact on their overall health. And one of the greatest things about this country is its rich diversity, and it's that diversity that the All of Us research program hopes to harness to help us learn more about and hopefully change the reality that there are far too many communities that have significantly higher disease burden than others. You know, health disparities are very well known, but not at all well understood. And research has the potential to be a powerful change agent in that regard. But as exciting and as promising as our research program truly is, we know that participation in research is not a simple decision for everyone. In fact, we know that many people are skeptical about and even hesitant to participate in medical research, and with good reason. You know, there have been unspeakable instances where unethical testing and research was performed, often under the guise of quote-unquote medical treatment. Henrietta Lacks, Tuskegee, Guatemala, Havasupai, just to name a few. You know, these examples involve real people, real families, and real communities, and these egregious abuses have understandably led to many individuals being skeptical about and resistant to the idea of sharing their medical information or participating in research. But here's the problem. The result of our community's hesitancy has sadly led to limited research into what most affects us. And that contributes to our community often not being on the receiving end of the benefits of research. And as if these tragedies weren't enough, in other cases, whole communities have simply not been invited to participate in research. And now I know this group is not guilty because in the poll this morning, 78% of you said that you were likely to refer your patients to participate in research, and 96% said that we need much more diversity in clinical research. But there are others who are not referring individuals to research, because the results are that less than 10% of most clinical trials have African American participation. There are 10% of the participants in studies are more often less than, African Americans represent less than 10% of those who participate in studies. Now, none of us can wave a magic wand to erase the past, but our number one priority and job one is to genuinely and with overwhelming respect and empathy, acknowledge the legitimacy, the fear, and the concerns and the mistrust these unfortunate historic actions and realities instill in many of the communities we are attempting to engage. But then we must quickly pivot to make it abundantly clear why we must participate in research. And, you know, I think we all get upset every time we think about the historic transgressions of the past, but I am thankful that they created much needed changes in the research community, many of them led by the National Institutes of Health, with efforts like the Belmont Report, a statement of basic ethical principles and guidelines that protect research participants from past abuses so that the mistakes of the past are never, ever repeated. And you know, we're not shying away from these thorny issues. Rather, we are engaging and partnering directly with key stakeholders, trusted community and provider organizations, and participants. And we're acknowledging and addressing these important issues head on because we must. The stakes are just too high not to. And we're also partnering with institutes like Cobb Institute and others to build a program with policies and processes to ensure that the transgressions of the past are never repeated. Just this past June, Dr. Morgan spoke very eloquently at one of our recent meetings, and he made it abundantly clear that our program must engage African American and other health professions in the design, development, and implementation of our program if we want to achieve success. And I know that Drs. Brown and Mitchell also have made this clear to our leadership. So we also have a transformational approach to participation, and it directly feeds into our transformational approach here. The All of Us research program is different in many ways from traditional research, and that's not by accident. We want the 1 million volunteers in our program to be true partners, not patients or subjects in the research project. We don't want to just helicopter in and get the information we need, only never to be seen again. We want our program to empower participants by providing access to the information that we gather over the course of the program so that they can not only use this information to learn more about their health, but they can be able to see how their participation is contributing to better health and health care for everyone. Our program participants will be involved in program development, what data we collect, what lab analysis we do, what research is conducted, and how data gets returned to participants. And I'm really excited that I have the opportunity to lead these efforts to bring actual diverse program participants into our governance and program development. So we're also transforming the way we approach access to data. All of Us aims to build one of the world's largest data sets for health research. And this data set, as I mentioned, will be accessible to diverse researchers, providers, and community scientists with appropriate safeguards to accelerate scientific breakthroughs. Indeed, the program is using the highest standards of privacy and data security to protect participant data and information. And having just laid out the strategic vision and approaches for All of Us, I want to just spend a few minutes very briefly talking about the program setup and what happens when someone volunteers. So there are two ways in which someone can choose to enroll in the program, either through a network of healthcare provider organizations set up by trusted medical centers in the United States, or directly through what is called the direct volunteer pathway, in which individuals can enroll via an online portal, website, or an app. But through either channel, participants will create accounts, be provided with informed consent, and begin their journey with the All of Us research program. And as I mentioned, we are engaging communities all over the map and have partnered with trusted organizations like Cobb Institute, NMAHI, to help us enroll, engage, and retain participants. The healthcare provider organizations are in red, and they are able to enroll a diverse patient populations, and they also have strong electronic record capabilities. And vitally important is our initial network of federally qualified healthcare centers, and you'll see them in light blue. They are developing and piloting approaches for enrolling special populations, especially those who are historically underrepresented. And in dark blue are our national partners that are really building our infrastructure, like the Mayo Clinic and others. And in green are some of our inaugural community partners that I'll describe briefly in a moment. Now, this is just another visual that shows all of the many trusted brands that we have behind our program. And this one I really particularly like because this shows our valued community and healthcare and faith-based organizations who are really vital in helping us to bring our efforts to communities across the United States. We've included faith-based organizations, community organizations, professional organizations who have a track record of serving as what Dr. Dyson described this morning as Trojan horses for their communities, using their prestige and place of authority to raise awareness and help others lead healthier and more prosperous lives, creating a culture of health equity. And you can see right in the heart of this slide on the second row, the Cobb Institute, an integral partner. And if you don't see your Greek organization represented in the slide, trust me, it's not because we didn't try. We can have an offline conversation about that one. In just the span of 1 year, I'm extremely proud that we now have more than 30 funded community and provider organizations as part of this network, many of whom had never received funding from a program like ours before. And we also have a Traveling All of Us research program experimental exhibit van where we call it the Mobile Journey. And we've partnered also with the National Library of Medicine, public libraries, and dozens more non-funded partners. And we're not done yet. Our goal is to blanket the nation with respected organizations and avenues to meet potential participants where they are, to provide information and awareness, and serve as ambassadors for our program. So this slide just outlines what a participant will be initially asked. We'll start by asking them some survey questions. We'll ask them to give us access to their electronic health records that are where available. They'll provide physical measurements and samples of blood and urine initially. And then the data types that we collect will evolve and grow with science, technology, and quite frankly, with trust. And as I mentioned before, to be eligible to enroll, a person must currently reside in the United States and be over the age of 18 with decisional capacity to consent. Just one last thing I want to touch on. It's extremely important for you to know that safeguarding a participant's identity and data and privacy is, to the best of anyone's ability, is one of our most important responsibilities. We know that participants want to understand what data we collect, how it will be returned to them, and of course, they absolutely want assurance that their data is being protected to the highest standards. And that's why from the beginning of the program, we have implemented privacy and security principles to help ensure participant data is as safe as we can make it. We have an expert security team, and they are taking many precautionary steps, end-to-end encryption, penetration tests, all other things that I don't know that much about, but I know that they are designed to protect us from any vulnerabilities in our system. Now, as I mentioned before, many great things have happened since I spoke at this event last year. After a year of testing our infrastructure and slowly, deliberately building relationships with participants, we officially launched our program on May 6, 2018. And I had the pleasure and honor of introducing our program to the world alongside Dr. Francis Collins, head of the National Institutes of Health, our All of Us Research Program Director, Eric Dishman, and the Reverend Dr. Calvin Butts from the legendary Abyssinia Baptist Church in New York City. And as you can see from these photos, we had a diverse and enthusiastic group of communities across the nation that generated a tremendous amount of momentum towards the launch of this program. And I'm proud to report that we now have nearly 100,000 participants at some stage in our program. And of those who have completed all current program aspects, 75% of them are what we call underrepresented in biomedical research. So that includes racial and ethnic categories, sexual and gender minorities, socioeconomic status, education, rural, and that's great news, and really unprecedented in research generally. And we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the Cobb Institute for being at the forefront of research and leadership and educating the public on key issues and being our partner in making sure that we enroll individuals who are traditionally and historically underrepresented in biomedical research. As mentioned earlier, we know from the literature that physicians and other healthcare professionals, particularly those who are culturally sensitive to, respectful of, and reflective of the diverse communities they serve, are amongst the most respected professionals, and we are indeed honored to have you as our partners. So in order for us to achieve continued success, we absolutely need your sage wisdom and insight and guidance to help us reach the patients and communities you serve. And I think we can all agree that despite all the incredibly impactful strides that have been made and the hard-fought fights that have already been won because of the tireless dedication and commitment of healthcare professionals and leaders like each of you in this room, unfortunately, there is much more work to be done, particularly as it relates to identifying and implementing ways to decrease disparities and enhance the health and well-being of the African American community and other communities of color. So as I think about what success looks like for this monumental effort, it's clear to me that it will not be defined by fancy blood banks or data systems, but rather it will be defined by how well we authentically and respectfully engage people, all people. Success will be determined by how effective we are at engaging people with whom we have something in common and in those with whom we have nothing in common. Simply put, the All of Us research program is about engaging and retaining all of us. And our success will be defined by how we engage and retain a diverse group of people who are willing to sign up and make a life-changing decision to become one in a million, to become part of a research initiative that has the potential to radically improve health and healthcare for individuals, families, and communities across the nation, and even the world, literally and figuratively, all of us. So, in addition to sharing how important it is for people of color to be a part of the program, I really loved it when Reverend Calvin Butts from Abyssinia addressed the elephant in the room, and he said, and I quote, "This research is not like the Tuskegee experiment, and it's supported by some members of the Henrietta Lacks family. It's for all ethnicities, and you can bet your life that white folks are in this. They want to know what's going to keep them alive, and we ought to want to know what's going to keep us alive also," end quote. Well, I couldn't agree more. So now that you're all super excited about our program, if you haven't already, I do hope that you will go to our website. It's joinallofus.org to learn more about the program, and by all means, bring along your friends and family too, because the only way we can improve health and healthcare for everyone is to make sure that research participants reflect the rich diversity of our nation. I'm going to close my remarks here because I'm really looking forward to listening to and learning from the esteemed lineup of speakers after me, but I'd like to leave you with a brief video.
We are one nation, one people. When called upon to give from within, we come together and find that our capacity to help others is limitless. Here, we are fearless. What lies inside all of us is more than data. It's life. It's more than insight and medical research. It's vision and honor and compassion. What's flowing through America's veins is its diversity. The next great breakthrough will be found in each and every one of us. And what we find there will unlock mysteries, heal the sick, and eradicate disease. We ask for 1 million individuals to come forward and stand on this landmark in history. We ask America to do, once again, what she has always done: lead the way forward. We're one nation, one people, but all of us are different, and it's those very differences that will lead to answers for generations to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson-Heron, for such an extensive and enlightening Cobb lecture. It says everything that we had hoped that it would, and we'd like you to know that there will be an opportunity again to ask questions of her. She is going to actually give closing remarks after we've been through the entire program. So probably some of those questions will be even more relevant at that time. Right now, I'd like to bring to the podium the President of the National Medical Association, Dr. Doris Brown, and while she's coming up again to acknowledge how much we appreciate Dr. Brown's involvement in bringing the All of Us opportunity to the Cobb Institute. Dr. Brown and Dr. Mitchell, Edith Mitchell, have served as the PIs for this particular endeavor. In your programs, I hope that you would read through the program. It's kind of like a little bit of an annual report of the Cobb Institute, but it very clearly describes what we have done over the past 6 to 8 months with all of us. So Dr. Brown, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having me. This is such an important part of what the National Medical Association and the Cobb Institute is all about, and it is critically important. You've heard from Dr. Richardson-Heron that this is critical, and I mentioned this morning how we are operating in the country and we have no idea about why certain things don't work well. Some work, and you make these symptoms, you don't know whether it's really due to what you're putting in your body. And so we now have the opportunity to be a part of the research, to get that data, to make our lives better, and to truly bring about health equity. Now, later on, after the program is finished, we will have our opening of the exhibit hall. And of course, all of us has a major welcome there. There's a booth. We hope that you will go by and gain some more information. You can actually sign up to begin to become a participant in this study. Now, we don't want just providers. We want everyone. As it says, this is all of us, and it means all of us. And again, the percentage of African Americans have been small, but this is an opportunity where you do not have to oversample a size to get the number. If we go out and get the true representation of the population in this country for African Americans, and we as the participant, the provider participant end of it, we are going to be encouraging our patients to participate in this research study. I won't say clinical trials as we learned this morning. We're going to say clinical research. And so again, if we are participating in this, we will get the answers that really will impact us. And we can be the researchers. We can put in the requests and design the studies to answer the research questions that are important to us. So not just giving your data and samples, but again, being truly a part of this and conducting research to answer questions that's in the back of your mind. So thank you again for letting me set the occasion. Do go by the exhibit hall later today. We will open, I guess, with a hard open at 5 and a soft open at 4:30. So see what's going on. It's going to be an exciting week. Thank you again.
We're going to take a couple of minutes to change the set just a bit to accommodate our panel, and then we will invite Dr. Lee Green. Dr. Lee Green is the Vice President for Diversity and Public Relations and Strategic Communication at the Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida. Dr. Green is also a very, very supportive board member for the Cobb Institute, and the Cobb Institute and Moffitt Cancer Center have collaborated for, I think, the past 7 years. We have a symposium each January, and we will have one in January of 2019 on the 26th and 27th of January on the same topic of precision medicine. So I think they've just about got the scene set. Dr. Green, would you like to come and begin our interactive panel? Thank you.
Good afternoon. So I am, I guess, extremely delighted to be the moderator for this very important session today. And so what I'd like to do is to go ahead and invite our panelists to come up and join me. Nobody's moving. They're moving slowly. Maybe you all need to give them a big round of applause. Would that help? Here we go. There we go. So as they're coming forward, we have joining us today some of the key leaders in their respective fields. The National Medical Association and the Cobb Institute are very well aware of the role that precision medicine is playing and will play in the future as it relates to healthcare. There is always that looming question that continues to come up regarding precision medicine, and actually wondering if it could potentially widen the gap in disparities. So we want to ensure that we have adequate representation in these cohorts so that we can answer some of the critical questions that will be asked. So our panel today will address key aspects of this important work. And so we invite you to think about questions that you might have as it relates to this important topic. And we'll have microphones that will circulate around the audience for your questions. And we will hold all of the questions until the end of each of our panelists' remarks. So we'll invite you to engage with our panelists. Each panelist will have about 5 to 7 minutes for some opening comments, and we'll go through each panelist. I said 5 to 7. I'm sure they all will take 10. We'll try to keep it at 7. Is that right? You'll probably take more time than I give you. So they'll have about 5 to 7 minutes for their respective comments. So our first panelist is Dr. Winston Price, who is the Director of Information Technology with the Cobb Institute. Dr. Price is also a past president of the National Medical Association. So, Dr. Price, will you come up and give us your remarks? Let's give him a big round of applause, please.
Good afternoon. Well, Dr. Richardson-Heron has set the stage, and we want to make sure that you understand your role as being an advocate for all of us. And so you noticed in your program it said interactive. This session is going to engage you to give us feedback through whatever mechanism you're comfortable. We have keypads at your sites. We will be interspersing some of the presentations with asking you to give us feedback. There'll be some where we'll ask you to use your cell phones, and so you can power up your cell phones, contrary to most presentations you attend, your iPads, because we want your feedback. We want to hear what you have to say about all of the information that you're hearing. All right? With that said, what we're going to do to power up, you're going to go to live.voxvote.com, okay? live.voxvote.com. When you get to that site, it'll ask you for a number. You'll put in 98370. And then as we go to the interactive questions, you'll see the questions. You'll have 30 seconds to give us your feedback. And you'll see some amazing things because we'll project the feedback that we get from the audience. Okay? With that said, Nope, it's interactive. You're going to do a wealth of interaction with us. We're going to get everything we can get out of you in terms of feedback. Live.voxvote.com. And just put in 98370. Okay? It won't come up to any questions until we go live. All right? You can just go to the next slide from there. Great. So what I'm going to do in the 5 to 7 minutes that I have is I'm going to take you through an understanding of the engagement that the Cobb Institute had with NIH. That engagement has resulted in a marriage. You'll see in your program book some of the bridal party involved with this particular partnership. We'll go through the detail of what has gone on since the honeymoon phase. And as we get through, we won't give you all the detail that everything that goes on in the boardroom and the bedroom, but you're going to have a good understanding about what COBB and NIH relationship has been like over the last 9 to 10 months. So COBB has been awarded a grant to work with the NIH in terms of this important initiative called All of Us. We started out in the phase 1 with the NIH, and our responsibility during that time was simply to engage our membership to be part of the All of Us. You heard from Dr. Richardson-Heron about all of the important aspects of the program, but that's not going to work unless we're able to get the consumers, ourselves, and our families involved. And so in that process, NIH worked with us to figure out how we could bring the message to our physicians, to our membership base, and to our families. And so that was the part of the first phase. And through that first phase, you see on this timeline a very vigorous program orchestrated by Dr. Morgan, who did a phenomenal job of moving all of the parts to make sure we were able to get information, both in terms of feedback from our members, but also going with information that the NIH provided to us. And so we had focus groups during that initial phase. We had little mini activity sessions in very many cities across the United States as part of that responsibility, and then prepared a report to address those things that we did with the NIH. There were focus groups, mini workshops. Conchita Burpee worked with Dr. Morgan in helping to organize the ones that were on the West Coast and then come back across to New York. We set up webinars, and those webinars were both done as 2 live webinars as well as an on-demand webinars that we made available to our membership throughout this engagement and wedding. We then had e-blasts, so we sent out the information, the robust information that was provided by NIH, and sent it out to our vast membership, as well as diverse groups of medical societies over the last 9 months. We did online surveys to get feedback. We wanted to make sure that the messaging that we were using to get this All of Us information out was resonating with our consumer base. And if that message was a little bit off, we went back to NIH with their strict guidelines for getting clearance, and we reformatted that message and then sent that out again. We created website material that we had specific to our consumer base and our membership, and put it on both the COBB website, but also put links on the NMA website, and asked many of our local affiliate societies to have links on their website as well. And then we used social media to get that message out through Facebook and Twitter. And we had many of our local physicians who took up the banner initially, and they were doing local meetings in their local societies to make sure that they were NMA influencers. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into specific detail on each particular interface that we had, but suffice it to say, our focus groups were in Washington, D.C. and in Tampa. Those occurred in January of this year. We then did many workshops in San Diego in conjunction with the Multicultural Health Foundation. And then we came back to Philadelphia on the East Coast, working with Dr. Mitchell, who hosted us very well, and we appreciated that particular intervention. We then had the webinars, which were live. We featured our NMA president in our webinars, and also Dr. Morgan did the webinar that was occurring from Chicago. And those were 2. We then set up a platform that was dedicated to the Cobb Institute that allowed not only the NMA members, but also physicians and interested groups across the United States to go to our educational platform and see all of the material that was available specific to the COBB engagement, but also for the NIH All of Us initiative as well. And so many of those videos that are available at the NIH site. You saw one of the dynamic ones was available through our platform. Okay? So you heard the engagement went well. I got another ring, and we went into phase 2, had a wonderful honeymoon, and then went to set up continuing education programs in all of our regional meetings. All of our regional meetings. And those occurred over the course of a 4-month period from February all the way till July. And each of those meetings, we got additional feedback through our interactive surveys and our pre- and post-tests, which you'll take in a few minutes, because, again, we want to make sure that as Dr. Richardson-Heron goes around the country saying that I've engaged through the Cobb Institute and the NMA, influencers who are going to go and deliver that message, we want to make sure that that message was well understood by our membership, that they were delivering an accurate message, and that they were comfortable. You'll hear later in the presentation from one of the panelists about the importance of getting that trust. And so we wanted the message to be able to deliver that trust. And our last meeting occurred in New York City. So webinars in phase 2 continued. We continue to send out e-blasts and do online surveys through SurveyMonkey. We had also local presentations by our influencers. But the importance in this second phase was the leadership sessions, the continuing of the website materials, and launching a website through the Cobb Institute to address those specific issues. And how much time do I have? Overtime. All right. All right. So I get paid more in overtime, right? All right. All right. So what we'll do is just go through the locations where the regional meetings occurred. One of the important things that we developed in our particular phase 2 engagement is develop a toolkit for the physicians specific to the NMA and the Cobb Institute. And so they can go to the Cobb Institute website and bring up specific information that they can customize for their practice and for their consumer base. We also provided them with links, obviously, to the All of Us, Join All of Us website. And so we had lessons learned, and we moved into phase 3, and that was where we are right now. And the important things in phase 3, and I'll sum up with this, Dr. Lee, is that we wanted to make sure the participants were excited about the All of Us program, and I can assure NIH and Dr. Dara Richardson-Heron that the engagement we had with the physicians in all of our regions and all of our local meetings, they're excited about the program. They want to do the right thing in terms of getting 1 million or more individuals involved. But they want to make sure that it resonated in terms of the marketing material that was being used at NIH. We want to make sure that there was diversity reflective of our population so that we could use that information in a way that we could gain the trust of our communities. We wanted the materials needed to reflect not only African American families. We know that the study is for people 18 years and older, but we wanted to reflect African American families. And so having children in some of the material will mirror what families believe they look like presently. And there are no children in any of the NIH material currently. And then we wanted the videos to make sure that there was enough representation of a diverse community. We also expressed concern about the fact that there are only 2 languages that the material is in right now, and so Cobb is ready, willing, and able to position itself to help NIH have the material available to all the diverse languages, particularly in French and Creole, Patois, and a number of other individuals in our population that have kind of dialects of Spanish, but not the way that it's being projected on the website currently. And we're willing to help with that. And also some of our individuals with challenges indicated that they need ways to enroll if they can't see the words on a website or on paper. Okay. So let me just move through and say that Cobb Institute and all of these slides are going to be available electronically through the Cobb website, so don't feel slighted if we're moving a little bit faster than you would like. We want to make sure that we create material that engages people and keeps them engaged over this 10-year period. And so through phase 3, we're hoping to partner with NIH to develop thumb drives that have all of the information. As you saw earlier part of the presentation when Dr. Richardson-Heron was speaking, that was picked up and live streamed and will be available on demand. And so we want to use that channel. There are individuals, yeah, he's going to hook me off now. There are individuals that we're working with who have access to more than 120 million. As you know, on-demand video has become the wave of the future. And so through using that partnership, we'll be able to reach 120 million households using that advent and having those available through Amazon and Netflix and Apple TV and all those other modalities. So we'll come back to the other interactive stuff, okay? We thank you for all of your involvement. We know you've been taking copious notes, and so we're going to pass this baton off to the next speaker. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, thank you, Dr. Price. We appreciate it. It is clear that the Cobb Institute is a truly engaged partner with the All of Us initiative, and we understand that in order for it to be successful, we have to be truly engaged. So thank you so much, Dr. Price. Our next panelist, Dr. Reuben Warren, is a professor and director of the Center for Bioethics, the National Center for Bioethics and Research and Healthcare at Tuskegee University. Dr. Warren is very dear and special to me, as most of you know. Dr. Warren was a part of the legacy committee that got President Clinton to apologize to the men of the syphilis study, and because of his leadership, I was able to be a part of that group as well. So Dr. Warren will discuss historical reluctance towards clinical trials. Dr. Warren, give him a big round of applause.
Good afternoon. I'm going to go quickly, and I really have the slides for to kind of serve as a trigger, you know, because I can't say enough in the time that I have. So this should trigger some thoughts in your mind. But as I listen to the earlier presentations, I had a couple of triggers that I wanted to raise. And the question of advocacy is something that's it's a mighty responsibility. But I would suggest that NMA and all of us who are concerned ought to think about not advocacy, but gatekeepers. Very different role. That gatekeeper historically has protected our community and said when to come and when not to come. And sometimes when not to come is a better message than when to come. So I would suggest that gatekeepers is another thing, another word you ought to consider. I would also suggest that whenever you hear Tuskegee, it's negative. And I want you to kind of transform your thinking. First off, it ain't Tuskegee. It's the United States Public Health Service at Tuskegee. The syphilis study is the United States Public Health Service at Tuskegee. Be clear, the responsibility, the epicenter was not Tuskegee, it was the federal government. And we have to change that, and we're asking federal government for us to trust you again. I don't know. I spent 20 years at the Centers for Disease Control. 3 or 4 of those were at NIH, and I don't know. I don't know. The third thing is that I looked at this wonderful array of partners. I ain't seen Tuskegee anywhere. Nobody has come to Tuskegee. I'm there every day. So I invite you, all of you, come on down. Come on down. And those were some triggers. And then lastly, the question of clinical trials. I missed the session this morning, but arose by any other name. It still arose. And if we don't call it clinical trials, we're going to get confused. Let's make a clinical trial what it ought to be. Let's don't call it something that it ought not be. So that was my triggers from this month. Let me go quickly through my brief triggers for you. Uh-oh, I done messed up. Well, that simply says that we are concerned again with equity. And the language that the government started off with in 1985 was black and minority health. And it shifted to health disparities, and now it's shifted again to health equity. A rose by any other name is still a rose. We still have health disparities. We still have equal or unequal access. There's still excess deaths. Satcher et al. Went in 2000, re-looked at the 85 report that reported 60,000 excess deaths. He found 83,000. We're going the wrong way, and I would suggest if you did the same study right now, it'd be more than 83,000. So let's be real clear about what we're trying to do. The purpose of my research, and it was funded by Eli Lilly and Company, was to put some science to what you already know. You know that there's distrust, and the question is it something you feel or is it something we collectively feel? So I thought I'd use some qualitative research methodologies to really document what you are feeling, because science is more than just feeling. It's science by its definition is to know, and we're trying to know. We asked 3 questions in our work. Why, and I'll let you read them. I won't take my 7 minutes for you to repeat them. But I really want to know why don't we trust? And how do we eliminate the barriers? And the most important is, if you violate the trust, what are the consequences? Because historically, continually, the research community has violated over and over and over again. It's not just historical, it's happening as we speak. The methodology, legitimate qualitative research, legitimate quantitative research. We did a study of using 35 what we call gatekeepers, and we searched those who we think represent the African American community, the health professionals, and we interviewed 3 of former NMA members. We interviewed key people in the faith community and civic society, Urban League, NAACP, 100 Black Men. And we asked them questions, what do you think? Because it's important what we think, and we collectively think something, that's qualitative work, and that can translate into what we do. The analysis, we used Atlas TI to really to pull themes from what we heard. And I did all 35 interviews so it wouldn't be misinterpreted from somebody hearing one thing and somebody else saying something else. And we used Atlas TI to really pull together those themes. And here's some of the things that came from that work. Younger generations use social media. You already felt that, but we know that at least from their perspective. The older folk, they like to personally talk. I trust you when I can look in your face and see what you say. Younger generation mistrust the system and they don't separate science from the government. You know, when I was at CDC, I used to say, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. And the response was, yeah, and the check is in the mail. So that's still something that needs to be supported and clarified. Do we trust those who should be trustworthy? And the silent generation really feels and looks at things very differently. Other salient factors, and I'm rushing through, I have a couple of minutes left, I hope. One other factor was understanding the research and the importance of research. What is research? What does it really mean? When I was coming through school, research was something you didn't want to do. And in Tuskegee, you don't mention the word research. People say, oh, no, not me. But research is something we must do in order to answer the important questions about our health. And the other is the quality of the relationship between people, groups, and institutions. Who are the trustworthy people? One of the interviewers said, if you are trustworthy and you add an institution that's not trustworthy, your trustworthiness comes in question. So be careful where you are, because it may influence how people think about who you are and their trust in you. Medical mistrust. There's a long history of mistrusting the system. There's still some discussion at Tuskegee about the U.S. Public Health Service syphilis study and to what degree Was the National Medical Association involved? That's the conversation that we have to have. To what degree? And just because you are a black physician doesn't automatically make you a member of NMA. I'm a dentist, and just because you are a black dentist doesn't make you an automatic member of NDA. So you represent more than you think just because of your presence. And the last is trust and trustworthiness. I hear the word trust me all the time, but I'm suggesting we shift the paradigm to trustworthiness. Prove yourself trustworthy. And what are the ingredients to prove yourself trustworthy? One thing we know, you got to put in the time. You have to put in the time. Don't come up to me today and want me to participate in the study tomorrow. I'm not doing it. You have to develop a relationship, and that takes time, and that's the issue of trustworthiness. So I would suggest we raise the question of trustworthiness beyond trust, because if you prove yourself trustworthy, trust will follow, we believe. And here are just some themes, about trust, and we can talk about them again. And this is some of the responses from the individuals who I interviewed. And more importantly, some themes about trustworthiness. And it's not anything you don't already know, but something that we collectively felt and expressed. And the take-home message is shift the paradigm from trust to trustworthiness. And I have the data to support my comments. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Warren. He certainly has given us a lot to think about, and I would imagine that the question and answer session should be robust. We would hope. So our next panelist is Dr. Edith Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell is, you got individual applause there. Dr. Mitchell is a clinical professor of medicine and medical oncology. She's the director of the Center to Eliminate Cancer Disparities. She's an associate director of diversity affairs, and she does all of her work at the Sidney Kimmel Cancer Center at Jefferson. And she is also a past president of the National Medical Association. Dr. Mitchell.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your inclusion of me on this panel, and thanks to the Cobb Institute and the National Medical Association, and also the NIH for sponsoring this program. So many times we look at these new programs and we say, well, what does all of this mean that we want over 1 million people to participate with us in this effort? And so I titled this, Planning the Future, but Assessing the Past Through the Rearview Mirror, meaning that we cannot forget about the government program at Tuskegee and others where we know there were injustices. And I say injustices, but I say also there was inappropriate treatment of individuals. These are people who not only was there an injustice, but they didn't get the approved treatments that were available at the time. So I focus my work on how do we use the knowledge that we have and the information so that we can move forward, not only for ourselves, but for our communities. So looking through the rearview mirror, but planning for the future. Now, I've been in clinical research for more than 40 years, and I want to set the stage for you with a clinical problem and how you can use precision medicine to help us get through this. So not only do I work with all of us with the Cobb Institute and the NMA, but I'm also working with the Council of Councils for NIH, and also clinical and translational research for the National Cancer Institute. So I'd like to bring it all down to see how we can use precision medicine. And I'll tell you about a patient that, as a medical oncologist, I treated. He actually, African-American man from Wilmington, Delaware, who called to ask if he could be on one of my clinical trials. Usually I don't get a lot of people calling in saying, may I be in a clinical trial? They're usually somehow referred. But he had heard about our new clinical trial. He was 61. He had metastatic colon cancer, which I have helped develop a number of treatments. So in his first visit in my office, and I said, well, you called in to volunteer. He says, you know, I have lived longer than any other man in my family. And I heard about your program. I want to participate. He had 8 brothers and 1 sister. He says, all of the men in my family have died of colon cancer. So we talked and we went through things. What we were able to find with precision medicine, that he had a certain gene that predisposed individuals to cancer. What we were then able to do, find a drug that worked for him, and he did very well with this treatment. But what we were able to do, and he convinced his family, all of his nieces and nephews and grandkids, and everybody came in. We tested all who wanted to participate and found which of the family members had inherited this gene. So consequently, they are now in a surveillance program. And at this time, although on the day he came in and told me that all 8 of his brothers had died of colon cancer, his sister had had breast cancer, and he had lived longer than any man ever in his family. His father had died of colon cancer as well. Since that time, we've been able to work with the family. Not one other person in that family, to my knowledge, has died of colon cancer because they're in this program to find it early. So there are lots of advantages that we will be able to work with from the information gained from all of us. So you've heard precision medicine, and in the case of my patient who I've just explained, that's how precision medicine can be utilized to help us understand. So it's really about, this gentleman called my office to come in, so we've got to establish relationships, nurture those relationships. Think about if he had not come, or if he had not told us about his family, we would not have been able to utilize that information. So that we all have to work together, the clinicians, the researchers, those in data, and all of us to focus on our mission of treating diseases more appropriately for precision medicine, but it also involves prevention, earlier diagnosis, so that we do not have all the stigma of diseases in our communities. Another, pancreatic cancer. Lots of individuals with pancreatic cancer, but what we are finding is that there is a gene that predisposes to early diabetes, and there is a relationship for pancreatic cancer. So what are we doing now? Evaluating individuals with early onset diabetes and trying to find this pancreatic cancer gene. So those are ways that we can use precision medicine and all of the information from all of us so that we are thereby moving forward as a community. So what do we mean by this? Well, minorities, African Americans, Latino, Hispanic populations, American Indian populations all make up about 38% of the United States population. This population of minority individuals is increasing in this country, and it is expected that within a few years, the majority in this country will no longer be the majority, that minority individuals will account for more than 50% of the United States population, so we're increasing. So if minorities have higher incidences of certain disease processes, cancer, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, and others, we can see these conditions continuing to increase. But yet, when we look at clinical trials, just as the trial I described where a patient came in to see me, when we look at those trials, fewer than 10% of individuals who are of minority, racial, ethnic backgrounds participate in these trials. So what we can look for in terms of all of us, one will be ability to maintain the data. So data research and center that puts the data into a database. It is secure so that nobody has to worry about their data being utilized inappropriately. A biobank where the blood and urine specimen are kept. A participant center where individuals may participate, enroll, and thereby participate in the data, but actually get that information into the center. There are technology centers. There are healthcare provider organizations so that some of this information can go back to the participant. They can work with their providers and their clinicians to help with their own medical care, and then there's communications and engagement. And we say, why do we want to bring all of those components together? Well, Dr. Harold Friedman provided this information to me on his ideas of how this all works together. And when he indicated that disease processes are based on a number of things. First of all, there are the genes. So the genes are very important, but they can be influenced by social injustice, poverty, socioeconomic status, culture. And if we are to address and fix the system, note the lower panel, we got to work with prevention, early detection, diagnosis and incidence, the correct treatment, the right treatment for the right patient at the right time, then follow-up of treatment. What do we do after successful treatment? So some things that I put together that we need to do, increasing minority provider and patient participation in clinical trials. We all need to do this. And while I'm an oncologist, you can say ditto for others, Alzheimer's, hypertension, diabetes, and others. We need to engage patients and communities to participate in strategies and how do we develop ideas, and everyone can play a role in how we develop those plans. We've got to have prevention trials, create a climate that actually enhances trust and participation in trials. We've got to have equal opportunities for access to not only participation in clinical trials, but access to clinical care. Define and develop those biological differences that predispose individuals or their families to disease processes, just as the patient I described who was predisposed to colon cancer. We've got to enhance cultural competence so that we are saying the right things, we're doing the right things, we're showing the right pictures, the right slides, so that we have cultural competence. And then on through, and I will add one other caveat, and that is we need to work to increase the number of minority health professionals in this country, the physicians, the nurses, the digital individuals, the technology folks, so that we're all working together. And not only can we say we're all working together, but it's all of us working together in the same direction so that we are benefiting our communities, our organizations, our people, and ourselves. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mitchell. So we have one final panelist, and then we'll open it up for your questions and comments. Our final panelist is Mr. Brian Butler, who is the president and CEO of Vistra Communications. Vistra is a public affairs, public relations, and marketing firm in Tampa, Florida. His firm has won many business awards for their innovation in this space. Mr. Butler will discuss the use of technology in the enrollment process and communications. Mr. Butler.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Morgan, and the members of COBB for asking me to participate in this panel. You know, I must say I'm really honored to share a stage with so many distinguished individuals. In fact, Dr. Morgan, you know my wife Maureen, I asked her last night, why in the heck would Dr. Morgan ask me to participate on a panel with so many doctors in a room with so many medical professionals? And she said simply, because you aren't one. That you bring a different perspective to this monumental task of what they're trying to accomplish, and you have some experiences in this area that are relevant. This is important. This is really important for those that participate, but it's also important to those that don't. And what I mean by that is, I know there are a lot of struggles and decisions that people have to make, you know, given the things that Dr. Warren spoke about and so many others. But the question you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself is, can we afford to be left behind? And I think that's a question that it's a personal question I think that everybody in this room has to make. And you have to come to grips with that struggle in itself. But I think the people in this room also have to come to grips with how do you communicate that with others? How to communicate that to others? Let me put my views in context. I'm a retired Army officer. I commanded troops in combat on one end, and I worked in the White House where I was the director of biodefense policy on the Homeland Security Council. I was a spokesperson for an Army secretary and for a chairman. I've been to 68 countries. I have seen countries that do very, very well. And I have been in countries where people are left behind. And there is a big difference. I started my company out of my house in 2007, 2008 timeframe. And I think many of you remember what was happening in 2007, 2008. In fact, my mother said, what are you doing and why are you doing that? And when I shared with her my dream, she said, you need to go back and pray about that. And when I assured her that I had prayed about it, she just looked at me and said, do me a favor, go back and pray about it again, but this time listen. So as you think about how to communicate this tough message to people that look like us, somebody better pray about it. And they better listen. You know, over the past several weeks, this is where Dr. Morgan is never going to invite me to come back again. Over the past several weeks, I probably reached out to 25 people I know. Not one had heard of this program. Not one. Within the last hour, I reached out to 5 reporters that I know. Not one had heard of this program. there is some work to be done to keep people like us from being left behind. How many, and I don't want to embarrass anybody, so don't raise your hand, but you can wink or nod at me or something. How many people in this room are registered? Everyone? Maybe I should registered for in the database. Most of, I see heads going this way, and I see heads going this way, which I expected. You know, I expected the passionate few over here that are registered, and there'll be lots over here for whatever reason that haven't. Well, I'm registered. I'm the son of a civil rights activist who later became a nurse. And I grew up hearing stories about the Tuskegee Project. And those stories fueled me to do something to make a difference in the lives of others. Let me just give you a couple of things to consider before Dr. Lee Green pulls me off the stage. Communication must be honest and forthright when dealing with subjects such as this. Communication starts with me, and it starts with you. Don't underestimate how big a challenge this is. To get minorities to sign up for this, whatever you call it, study, trial, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, don't underestimate how big a challenge this is. Don't underestimate how big a challenge it is to convince people to give up their data at a time when every day, every week we read the newspaper and there's been a data breach somewhere. Speak in the first person about this, because the circles that you are in, the first person matters. The family members that you have, speaking in first person matters. And lastly, all of us is a brand. It's a brand like Nike is a brand, but it's also a brand like the Tuskegee Airmen are a brand. But it's also a brand like the Tuskegee Study. And I understand your point of wanting people to say this differently, but that brand has been affixed to that, and it's such a tough road. It's such a tough hill to climb to reverse that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Butler. We really appreciate it. So at this point, we would like to engage the audience. I know we have, where are the microphones? Okay, we have one, just one microphone? Can we get a couple? Okay, so you want to, so we have 3 pre-test questions that we'd like to engage you on while we're getting the microphones set up and ready to go. And so they're using the clickers or their cell phones on this one?
The clickers.
The clickers. So if you will find your clicker, does everybody have a clicker? No? So we have people who don't have clickers? So quickly, we have plenty of clickers in the front rows. If we can quickly get clickers to the folks in the back. So while they're doing that, the first question is empower study participants with data and information to improve their own health. And you see the choices: strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree.
Because, are you asking, do we think that what all of us is possible, that's something important to you? What's the question?
Is that your? You want to address that?
He's resetting.
So Dr. Jones was asking for clarity of the question.
Are you asking, is this something all of us is aiming to do? Are you asking us, is that a good thing?
We're asking you as an individual.
Do we think that's an important thing to do?
Right. That's correct.
Can we get the question back? Are they voting again? Are we resetting this? Is that what you'd like to do? Yes, let's reset it. Does everybody have a clicker now? Are we good? Yep, okay. So while he's resetting that, I know we have some folks who will have questions for our panelists. One question I have, Mr. Butler, since you're the last one to present, one of the things that you mentioned was that you polled several people in your circle of influence who had never heard of all of us. And so my question to you, because if you looked at the information that was presented about the program, you saw a lot of partners, a lot of names, a lot of institutions, et cetera. So the question is, why has it not saturated beyond those groups? And what do we need to do differently so that the folks that you're interacting with will in fact hear about this important initiative?
So first of all, can everyone hear me? Yeah, I think so. You can't communicate with this audience, with us, in traditional mainline media. I think it has to be very targeted for the audiences that we're trying to reach. It has to be a conversation of value to these communities, to the people within the communities, which is different than a generic message that goes out to the general public about the significance of this. You heard Dr. Warren and others talk about, the legacy activities that have been out there that people think about when they hear another study. So it must be done a little differently.
Okay, all right. Any other comments from panelists on that?
The messenger is more important than the message. And so when something comes from NMA around the health of black folk, it's a powerful message, but it's also a hell of a responsibility.
Okay, great. So we have our question loaded again. Empower study participants with data and information to improve their own health. And you see the choices again. So if you will vote now. It's not. The timer's broken? Yeah, but if they register and you tell me. So they said go ahead and register your answer and they'll bring it up.
Let's go to the next question. Just go to the next question.
Okay.
Question 2. Go ahead.
Bear with us, you're having a little technology challenges.
Okay. Just go to.
I see my friends up there, Reuben Warren, Lee Green. Listen, I'm Dr. Cynthia Warwick. I'm a pharmacist and health services researcher, and I'm president of Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And I participated in the regional NMA region conference in Biloxi, and I signed up for the All of Us. I share some of Dr. Warren's concerns because when I think about it and thinking about it as a researcher, and I have a population of 800 African American students on my campus who I think it would be important for them to participate in this study. I've already been contacted by UAB to go down and get my vitals and get all of, they collect the data. I haven't done that yet because I really feel that NMA needs to have a stronger role in terms of access to the data and getting credit for recruiting African Americans into the study. And so what I'd like to see is how can NMA and possibly the Cobb Institute work with HBCUs like Stillman and Tuskegee to collect data from our populations, but we have access to those data so that I can have my students learn about research and use, aggregated and identified data to think about this so we can. I participated in the panel in the session yesterday on mentoring and pipeline. And if we're not talking about precision medicine in our undergraduate programs, and we're not going to produce more doctors because that's where medicine is going. You know, I'm a pharmacist. I know I've seen all the changes in pharmacy through these years. So how can we influence the NIH to have us collect data at our HBCUs and own those data, you know, have access and really participate in the protection of the privacy and data that Dr. Warren was talking about.
Great. So I know we're bumping up against time, so I just want to do a quick time check. Dr. Morgan, we're about, okay.
Just one question, and I'll do the one.
Okay. All right. So can we have someone, I want to make sure we address Dr. Ward's question. Do we have someone on the panel who can address the question, and then we'll do the interactive and close the session out? Do we have someone?
I think.
Oh, you want, okay. Do we have a mic? Right here.
Thank you so much for your question. It's a very important one. I want to just clarify that it is very important for everyone to have access to the data, and that's one of the unique things about our program. Everyone will have access to the data in various different tiers, so your students will be able to utilize our research platform to do all the kinds of research that anyone else can do, obviously with the appropriate safeguards. To your point of collecting data specifically at separate institutions, that's a question I believe that's been asked. I believe Dr. Mitchell even asked that question. You know, why cannot we build more capacity in the historically black institutions to store and curate the data? That's something that I think we could certainly think about. Right now we're housing everything at the biobank because of standardization and the way that we're protecting everything, but that's not to say that in the future we won't be able to build capacity later. So I just want to clarify, it is very important for you to understand that everyone will have access. Researchers from all across the country will have access to this data.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
Great, thank you so much. So, Dr. Okay. So, Doctor, do we have the, are we still going to try to get the questions? Okay, so they want to just do one more question from the floor. And so do we have another question? We have a hand to my right here. This will be our last question for the panel.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dr. Rembert. Quick question for you, Dr. Richardson. What incentives have been given to the participating organizations for participating in this All of Us campaign?
Here you go.
Here you are. We have a mic right here.
So as I mentioned, since I've been with the program, we have brought on over 30 funded partners. So that means that incentive is that they are being funded to do the work. I used to lead a national organization, the YWCA of the United States. People reached out to me all the time and wanted to leverage my resources, but they didn't want to pay for it and provide us with the resources to do that. We are doing that differently, and we have partnered with all of the organizations that you mentioned. They are receiving funding based upon a budget that they present to us to do this work. I just want to add to Dr. Warren's point, Tuskegee is one of our partners. Dr. Sadecki, the bioethicist, they're part of our Southern All of Us network. So I agree with you 100%. We need to have Tuskegee involved, and they are involved. But our partners are receiving actual funding based upon budgets they provide to us for the work to reach their constituents.
Great.
I just need to clear that up too, because Dr. Shodeke is not in the National Center for Bioethics Research and Healthcare. I am. So if it's representing Tuskegee, it has to come through my center.
Okay. And that's fair enough, but he presents himself as the bioethicist and professor at Tuskegee University, and he's part of our Southern All of Us network. So I just wanted you to know that we certainly are looking at all institutions from all across the network. And it was on the slide, but it was so small, perhaps you didn't see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know there are other questions and comments. Unfortunately, we are completely out of time. So let's give our panelists one more big round of applause. We appreciate your participation. Thank you all. Turn it back over to Dr. Randall Morgan.
Thank you all very much for your patience and also for the questions. We may have some time after the session informally to ask and answer more questions. But we have a very tight schedule today in terms of the NMA activities, the House of Delegates, we have the opening of the exhibits, and so it's very important for us to be on time with our program. And we'll make any modifications that are necessary so we conclude on time. Our third session is a jointly sponsored session with Project Impact. As many of you know, Project Impact is a National Medical Association program that seeks to improve the access of physicians in the National Medical Association into clinical trials, and also in terms of education of both the providers as well as the patients in the communities. It's been highly successful. We've collaborated with Project Impact, Yolanda Fleming and Dr. Powell, a PI, for over a decade between the Cobb Institute and Project Impact. And so our panel today on ensuring health equity, including minority participation in the All of Us program, is going to be a unique opportunity for an interview. And our interviewer today is Monica May, who is a News and Community Affairs Director for Star 94.5, Cox Media here in the Orlando community. And we also have, with regard to discussions of the problem, a view from industry, Rose Blackburn, who is the Executive Medical Director, Pharmaceutical Product Development, and is also the chair of the Physician Executive section of the National Medical Association. And finally, we have our true hero, the clinical research volunteer, Alana Peters, and Dr. Karen Bell, who is professor of neurology at Columbia University, Irving Medical Center, Taub Research Institute for Alzheimer's Disease, and a longtime NMA member and expert in things dealing with neurology. So could all of our members of the panel come, and I think Ms. May will begin the proceedings. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for that light clap. I appreciate it. I know as the day comes to, well, as you're closing out right now, you've been getting information on overload. My name is Monica May, and I'm actually the host of the Tom Joyner Morning Show here in Orlando. And one of the things that I think we can utilize Tom for is getting the word out about the All of Us program. I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that we have about thousands, I'm not even going to give you a number, thousands coming to Orlando in just a couple of weeks for the All-State Tom Joyner Family Reunion. So when you're ready for the information about the All of Us program to go out to the masses, to go out to consumers, let's talk about how we can make that happen, because that would be a perfect place to do it. And I tell you to do it quick because Tom is about to retire, and you don't know which way the family reunion will go, you don't know which way the cruise will go, but the family reunion is the place to be for that. So it is my understanding that we are going to try to close some gaps this afternoon, and we want to do that as quickly as possible and leave you with one chore, and that would be the verbiage. How do we get doctors to want to facilitate trials? How do we make them do research on their own? And what are the words? What do we say? So we've already introduced our panel, but I just wanted to share a little bit more about Dr. Rose. Dr. Rose is currently Executive Medical Director, and you can read some of this. I'm not going to read it all, for Pharmaceutical Product Development, LLC. And I asked her, because she was a practicing OBGYN for many, many, many years, to make that type of a transition, she felt it was important to do that. Now, you know they have the old saying, if you're not at the table, you better bring your own seat. So she's brought her own seat to the table, and she is the voice for us, and a very profound one. Dr. Karen Bell is a professor of neurology at Columbia University in New York, the Irving Medical Center, in the Cobb Institute for Research on Alzheimer's Disease and the Aging Brain, and she also holds the position of attending physician at New York Presbyterian Hospital. I forgot to tell you, that's where I was born, yes, and she is also an investigator. And how many times do you get to meet an actual trial participant? Well, we have one with us this afternoon, and that is Alana. And I really want to start with Alana because, Alana? Well, I want to start with Alana because how was it that you were introduced, and if we may ask, what was your study, and why did you feel it, just intrigued about it?
Okay, well, I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
No, you got to hold it all the way up.
Is this better?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, I was, unfortunately, I suffer from fibroids, and I was doing some online research with respect to fibroids, what causes, what treatments are available, and during my research, I happened to discover a clinical trial in the area. So that piqued my interest because I have a family history going back about 3 generations with respect to issues gynecologically. So when I heard about the trial, I thought this is the perfect opportunity for me to try to see if there's anything that I could do for future generations so that they don't have to go through what previous generations had been through.
So you had been going to your doctor for the issue. Had your doctor ever mentioned participating in a study trial?
Absolutely not. It was just through my own personal research and my initiative.
So that's one of the things that we have to do better with. And how many Elenas do you have out there that are going to be, as a patient, that research savvy? So kudos to you. We'll find out the results and everything toward the end of our discussion this afternoon, but I just want to applaud you for being proactive with your health. Yes.
Thank you.
When we were talking earlier, Dr. Rose and Dr. Karen and I, we were going back and forth with what's the verbiage? What can we say to people? Now, Dr. Rose, why don't, using that microphone, I think everybody should have one. Dr. Rose, talk with us about how to get these patients involved. What do you say to them?
Well, as you know, practicing physicians, we have an African-American physicians, we have a relationship with our patients, and we know we're special to them. They know we care about them. They give us a hard time sometimes, but it's special. So we have to use that for everyone's advantage. We have to, that's our seat at the table. If you're in the clinic with your patient, that's your seat, and that's good. So everyone doesn't have to be a clinical investigator, but I think as our role should be that we understand that we are fluent in talking to our patients about what a trial is. You have to be comfortable with understanding all the different types of trial and having a network and being able to say, hey, we're not controlling your diabetes that well, but there's a study that may be of interest. So that means you have to know who your colleagues are, and you have to know them well enough to know that they're, as a trial investigator, they're not going to try to take your patient. You're going to still remain their primary physician. I'll make a shameless plug and say that as co-chair of the physician executive section, we have a training or a very good session on Tuesday afternoon about how to be a trial investigator. And Project Impact we've been working with over the last few years, and we've trained a lot of the physicians that I've met in the past 13 years in industry. So we have a session Tuesday afternoon. Please join us. It'll show you how it'll be a clinical simulation actually on how to walk through a clinical trial as an investigator. So that's one of the things that we do to help us as an organization understand that part.
You actually said something, and I asked this question earlier. are doctors afraid that by going into this trial, sending their patients into a trial, that they're going to lose their patient?
I think sometimes, and you can, maybe that could be one of the survey questions we ask, and how do we make you feel comfortable? And I don't know that that's completely unfounded all the time, but the trial is the trial, and you're the treating physician, so you should know where your patients are, and you should get them right back, and you should be participating or at least understanding what's going on with them while they're in the trial.
And should feel that it's valuable information that you can use for other patients.
Exactly.
So, Dr. Karen, I understand that you are an investigator. Tell me how you are able to still match your practice, do the investigative research, and just move forward.
I'm a clinical trialist at a university medical center, so it may be a little different for me. But because I also have a clinical practice, I'm trying to get those patients to enroll in our clinical trials. It's extremely important that patients pick a trial that suits them, but it's on us, the clinicians, not just clinical trialists, but all of us as clinicians, to make sure that our patients are aware of clinical trials. And every disease has a foundation. So as a physician, you don't have to know all the details of every single trial or every trial that's running for each disease, but you can certainly go on the websites of the various disease foundations and find out what trials are running in your area, what the big trials are, so that you have a range of things to offer your patients. We don't want to be left out of the best treatments or even the cures for some of the diseases that our patients are facing. It would be a shame if, when all is said and done, we're the only ones left with the disease. And with health, with there being lack of health equity, that could be the situation, that we would be left out completely of the cures with precision medicine.
Especially with the trials going overseas and that medicine being used on our patients. So we're at a point where this opportunity is available. What about with teaching? And I think we talked about it, we hit it in the last panel. How are we training the next generation of doctors to be really concerned about becoming investigators, to be on point with the importance of these clinical trials? How are we training them? Do either of you?
I think different institutions approach it differently. In university settings, I think people are introduced to it in residency training and in medical school to a certain extent. I think it also is a matter of interest. Sometimes participation as a trainee is offered, and you may or may not have a relationship with the person, like Dr. Bell. You may not have a relationship with the investigator. You may not know about it. So we have to kind of be proactive in finding out what's going on as we go through training. There are formal training for investigators through NIH, through Project Impact, and through other organizations that train physicians. And sometimes a big university may have a formal training path as part of a faculty. Dr. Bell probably knows a little bit more about it. I was actually an investigator when I was in practice, and it was kind of on-the-ground training. Did a small module and got a study. So there's different ways there are different types of entry points.
You're getting ready to say?
This is certainly the time to think about becoming an investigator if you're not already one. Most of the institutes have training programs for investigators. And because they are also aware of the problems with health equity, they are now looking at increasing the pool of minority investigators, knowing that minority physicians are the ones who see the patients. And I think because of this new initiative to grow investigators, get younger investigators at the table, we could benefit from that. And it's just a matter of getting in touch with NIH, National Institute of Aging, all of the institutes have a program to develop investigators. And they're having these workshops nationally where you can be sponsored to participate for a week or 4 days to learn how to be an investigator. So that's really important.
Does it also provide another stream of income?
Yeah, investigators are given a budget to participate in the trial. So it can be an income stream, but it also requires infrastructure, staff dedicated to helping with the trial apart from your practice. So and none of it is rocket science, but it does take being intentional, and it takes support staff. So a lot of times if you're in a small practice, like I was, it's very difficult. So we had staff come in to help us, and they covered several different types of practices in our hospital. So we had the infrastructure. If we did not, we'd not have been able to do it. So, there are different ways to do that, but it can add an income stream.
But we should be honest with you, clinical trials are not a moneymaker for the investigators, but that's not the reason that we should participate. Our patients need to participate in these protocols so that the treatments will work for them. And we need to participate in these protocols so that our patients can trust the people who are doing the study.
That's a good point to come back to, Alana. What was your trust factor like when you were going through your trial? I heard you mention that you never really met the investigator, but was that important to you? Did you know that there was an investigator?
Actually, I had no idea there was an investigator. Okay. With respect to the trial, they just had a schedule with regards to appointments, so on and so forth. In fact, in my clinical trial, as we discussed, I had never even met the doctor. So it was just the clinicians that I had my appointments with, and then they had separate nurses or whichever who would come and administer whatever tests that needed to be done. I wasn't concerned at all with regards to the trust factor. I think because there was a lot of transparency with regards to the different steps, why we're doing what we're doing, and also a lot of the data was shared with me as well. So I never really had any trust issues with regards to the whole procedure.
You also mentioned how it was a full physical for you as well.
Yeah, it was, there was a couple of points in time where we had full physicals, and it really lent an air of responsibility with regards to the clinic. And you were able to trust them with regards to your health and know that they were actually concerned with how you were doing while you were involved in the actual trial.
One of the things, thank you very much, one of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier was the fact of how people see their African American patients. Sometimes we're not as, we don't always follow the rules. We don't always do what we're supposed to do. And does that mess up the trial? Well, yes, it does. So how can we make a black patient more palatable for these trials, to be considered even?
We can't change how people think. We have to, but I think we can educate patients. The talk we had prior to this, I think all the points Dr. Mitchell hit on about what makes a good investigator, how do you train investigators. So we can change our behavior. You can't always change how people think, but there are ways that by telling your patients about trials, you have an more educated patient. By educating yourself as a physician about clinical trial, you can become a source of referral, or you can become an investigator. So and I've heard, and I hear this every day in my work, we can't find African American investigators. We can't find the right patients. Well, it's easier to go overseas to another country that has black patients because they're too difficult here. You're going to hear those kind of reasons, but I think it doesn't take the burden off of us to up our game a little bit. And people believe what they're going to believe, but we know the truth. And I think being an educated patient, being educated physicians, and savvy about clinical research is the answer. And this program and other programs that change and allow access is what we need to think about.
So if we could blanket physicians with a message about the importance of getting their patients involved, learning more, how do they do the research? Yes, it is going to add maybe an hour or so to your day. How would you start the messaging for the physicians?
It's good medicine. You want your medicines that you give your patients to be effective in them. And the science is there that supports that different medications work differently in different people. Sex, gender, age. So it's not also just race, it's elderly versus pediatric, it's male versus female. We need to know that products work in everybody, across all demographics.
We even broke it down to talking about dermatologists with Botox and how there are different skin types in just one race. You're not even talking about race, you're just talking about various skin types. And everybody's looking to get some Botox at some point, perhaps. But they need to be trialed and tested as well. You had a question.
I do, and it's this notion, as we've been talking about clinical trials, and everybody who's talking about it knows that you can only
Thank you.
launch a clinical trial if you're... Everybody here knows, but maybe the way we talk about it isn't communicating this thing.
Yeah.
So when you're planning a clinical trial, you have to be at equipoise. That is, you have to have real question in your mind about whether the new thing that you're trying is better or the same as. You can't think that it might be worse than, but you have to be at equipoise about whether you think it's better or not. Otherwise, ethically, you shouldn't be doing the trial. So it is still, we're talking about clinical trials as access to the best medicines and the new medicines, but honestly, we don't know. It's access to new things, it's access to experimental medicines, but it's not necessarily access to better medicines than what the status quo standard treatment is. So I think that that's a subtlety that actually needs to be more clearly communicated, because access to clinical trials is not necessarily access to better medicines.
But how will we ever know how to develop new medicines?
Right, you go through that, but when you're recruiting a patient, you can't say, enter my clinical trial so you can get access to a better medicine, because you could only do a clinical trial if you were at equipoise. I come from when I was training in my doctoral program, I was part of the clinical trial center at Hopkins, and maybe the thinking is different now because that was many years ago. But ethically, back in the day, and I'm not doing anything with clinical trials now, so I'm saying back in the day, you couldn't even propose a clinical trial unless you wondered whether that new thing was better than or the same as. If you thought it was worse than, of course, it's off the table. But you had to be at equipoise about whether you thought it was better than or not.
Well, every time you take a marketed product, if you've never taken an aspirin before, ever, if you personally have never taken an aspirin, and you take one for the first time, that's essentially a trial of one person. So that product's been out, marketed for years. So you're experimenting all the time. And just because products are out already doesn't mean they're good for you or us.
And it doesn't mean, there are
Doesn't
many
mean
products
it's
that we
worse
wish
either.
we had done
Right.
a trial before, and
Right.
now we think it's better, and now you're not at equipoise, so you can't even do the trial.
Right.
Right, if it's been out there for a while and you think it's the best treatment, you can't even do a trial on those things.
Right.
Right, so the growing edge is, we think this is slightly better, so we're gonna do a trial. But even the people who get into the trial might be randomized to a placebo or some other control. And
But
so
isn't that how trials are done?
that is. So
Okay.
when we are approaching a patient, we can't say, enter my trial so you can get a better medicine.
I don't
Because
think...
they might be randomized.
I'll push back just a little bit. A lot of trials, you're allowed to stay on your stable dose of your medicine you're already taking and you're adding something on. So there are a lot of different types of trials. So I think we can agree to say that we're checking to see if there is something better.
But the person has
because we know that everything does not work.
Right, but that
I think what I would
individual-
like to do right now is table this for a moment because we're just repeating
yeah,
ourselves.
but I'm just saying the messaging so far is not clear for the patient.
It has to be subtle. Did you have a question? Or you were just standing there to pose for us? Okay.
I had a question.
And thank you, ma'am.
And this is
Thank
for
you.
the volunteer. I was just curious, was it covered by your health plan? And then for the other two speakers, can you address how health plans are, whether they're receptive to their members participating in clinical trials, because they tend not to cover things that are experimental?
Well, the medications provided in the trial for me, they were automatically provided. It had nothing to do with my healthcare provider.
Was there another question?
No, she had another part to her question. Most clinical trials don't involve your health insurance. Everything is paid for through the trial. There are some studies that are a little different, like the surgical studies or device implantation studies, where it may involve the use of your health insurance because you had to get some kind of device for your disease. But for regular medication studies, it doesn't involve your health plan.
And I'll add one other thing. There's now, I know there's CMS codes for providers that are participating in research, so you can bill for the code of participating in research. So I think we try to make it so that it's win-win for everybody. So the patient's not coming out of pocket to participate in a trial. You're reimbursed for your care, and for patients that don't have access to care, that's what's in it for me. That's a good thing. For the provider, they're compensated for their time through the budget and the investigator grant, as we call it. And then there's also the kind of a billing code for being a part of a trial.
Mm-hmm. And I think Alana said that she received some type of a stipend as well. You had a question, sir? Let's get a microphone to this gentleman. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Kitty Lorenzen. So first of all, this is a great program, and I congratulate everyone on this. There's just one comment I have to make, and that's, when I was reading through these materials on the plane over, I was reading the needs assessment that we had in terms of talking about all of us. And I was struck by the statement, the literature on African American participation in clinical trials reveals that study design, specifically comorbidities, as an exclusion criteria, may greatly hinder participation in clinical trials. Recruitment and outreach strategies that are used for the general public and are not tailored for these specific populations may also be insufficient. Regardless of the underlying factors, a resulting lack of diversity in clinical trials and biomedical research, if left unaddressed, may be a major barrier for translating any findings from precision medicine research into practice. And I agree with some of those things, but I think that, to me, the major reason why, at least I've seen, and I'm someone that's been involved doing clinical trials, that we don't have a great amount of participation in clinical trials certainly among black people, is a mistrust of the system. It's a mistrust of the fact that we have historically been in clinical trials that have not been to our benefit and historically have been used in clinical trials. And so that mistrust that is inherent in the system already, because we're black people in the system, but in the reality it's actually there because of racism, is something that really is hindering us. And so I think that this, even when we think about this needs assessment, I think it needs to be reassessed to talk about racism in medicine and how that's influenced where we are right now in terms of clinical trials and how clinical trials are conducted even now, and also how clinical trials, how we think about, how patients think about clinical trials. And I think also in terms of these programs, when we think about addressing these programs in terms of the future, in terms of talking about future meetings, we need to talk about racism in medicine as a driver of why patients aren't involved in clinical trials from both directions, from people bringing patients into clinical trials and from mistrust of the system in terms of patients volunteering to be in clinical trials.
Thank you very much. Ladies, I think what's going to happen now is that we're going to wrap up, and Dr. Henderson is going to come back up. Dr. Dara is going to come back up, and we'll do a wrap-up from there. But thank you so very, very, very much. Would you please give a nice round of applause to Dr. Rose Blackburn, Dr. Karen Bell, and our participant, Alana Peters. And Alana actually lives here in Florida. So this was great. Thank you, ladies.
Don't mean to push you off. While Dr. Dara Richardson-Heron is getting ready to come up, on your devices, just go to your live.voxvote.com. And I want you to answer one question, put input. What one or two words best describes the All of Us program for you? What one or two words best describes the All of Us program for you? It should come up on your phones now. And just enter. live.voxvote.com, 98370. Has everyone entered? No. Okay. Live.voxvote.com, 98370. What one or two words best describes All of Us program for you? 15 seconds. 9, 7, 4, 1. Close. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Price. And as we move toward the conclusion of our program today, I'd like to welcome back Dr. Dara Richardson-Heron for a wrap-up and her observations of our session today, and we'll of course be talking about next steps after this exercise today. I would like to acknowledge the co-sponsorship as well with the Physician Executives section of NMA along with Project Impact and COBB, and hopefully in the future we can continue this. Sunday's getting to be a challenge, but it's still the best time for us to have plenary type discussions like this. And so maybe next time we'll have our program in the middle of the Women's in Medicine luncheon, and we're just going to make it on something that's important, and maybe that will work. And then at the conclusion, after Dr. Richardson-Heron's remarks, Dr. Ron Bailey, the new chair of the board of the Cobb Institute, will give closing remarks. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the exhibits.
Thank you, Dr. Cobb. Dr. Morgan, rather. And thank you to, exactly. And really, you should give yourselves a round of applause for sticking it out. Really amazing job. I want to thank Dr. Green and Ms. May for their excellent moderation. Really awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to take you up on that offer for Tom Joyner. I mean, really, we need to get the word out. Just as a reminder, and I want to thank Dr. Butler for making it clear that, you know, a lot of people don't know about the program. We just officially launched on May 6th, right, of this year, right? May 6th of this year. And that's important to say because more often than not, you know, people of color are not brought in until after things are done, and you know, then we bring, you know, people of color in later. We brought NMA, as you saw Dr. Price mentioned and Dr. Morgan mentioned, NMA was one of the first groups we brought in back last year in November before we ever launched. So while I'm not excited that, you know, you reached out to 5 of your colleagues and they didn't know about us, I want you to know that, you know, we are just launching this project on May 6th of this year. And so we will need everyone to get the word out about the program and the project. So there are at least 40, 50 of you still here. So if you tell one person, we'll have 100 people who know, and then have them to tell 2 people. So we really want you to get the word out about the program. I really want to also thank Dr. Warren for reminding us of the triggers. He mentioned advocacy versus gatekeepers. And the program, actually, that the NMA is a part of is called a community and provider gateway organization. So we did that intentionally because we know exactly what you said. You're right on point. We want these organizations to be the gatekeepers, the gateways, the real trusted intermediaries in these communities to make sure that the transgressions of the past never, ever are repeated. We're very serious about that. And again, every time I step out, I'm putting my own personal reputation on the line. I wouldn't do that if I didn't trust it. So I want to thank you for reminding us of that. And also, I want to thank Dr. Mitchell for making it clear how precision medicine can save the lives of families, entire families. That's really what we're talking about. And also Mr. Butler for saying, can we afford to be left behind? I don't want to be left behind. The train has left the station, right? Precision medicine is here. The technological advances are here. They're going to happen with or without us. I want it to be with us because, as I said before, as someone who has nearly lost my life to a devastating illness, I want to be around for a few more years to see what the end will be. And I don't want to have some rookie move take me out unnecessarily because I didn't want to participate, right? So we got to fix the system, make sure that we are protected, make sure we have the proper gateways, but we want to make sure that our communities are not suffering from disease and burdens of disease in the way that we are, in such a disparate way. I really want to thank Monica again for making it clear that we have to utilize and leverage the voices we have in the community to get the word out, because we listen to each other, right? And a trusted voice like Tom Joyner, or a trusted voice like NMA, or Tuskegee, or the other institutions that we're involved, Morehouse, we got Morehouse here. Exactly. We have other partners. We have Harlem Hospital. We have a lot of different organizations. And I pushed the screen very quickly, but please go to our website, joinallofus.org, and you will see the many partners. We chose them intentionally because we want you to know that we are serious. We are not playing this time. We want everyone, truly all of us, to be a part of this. I want to thank Alana for sharing your story. What a powerful testimony. You are the reason why I advocate every day about the work that is needed to make sure that we get advanced, we get access to these treatments. And, we talked about just a few moments ago, and I liked Dr. Rose, it's good medicine. It is good medicine. And you know what? The train, again, has left the station, and not only now are we not deciding to participate, but we're sometimes now not being asked to participate. There was a New York Times article that talked about African Americans wanting to be part of clinical trials for late-stage cancers and immunologic therapies that are out there, but they're not being asked to participate because the pharmaceutical companies, some of them think that it's too much of an investment. So let us not get to the point where we are not eligible to participate or we're not being asked to participate. Let's make sure the appropriate protections are in place, and let's make sure that our voices are heard and that we bring our seats to the table, because I don't want to be left out of the advances, and I don't think any of you do either. So again, I just want to say thank you. Our program is new, it's exciting. I think it's going to be a game changer. It is not a research study in and of itself. Again, it is the creation of a research database that researchers from all around the United States, whether students, whether adults, whether tenured professors, can have access and answer some of the questions that have been pressing in our communities for many years. So I thank you all for coming and showing your interest in the program. Please go to our website to learn more. I'll be around to answer any questions, but I have to tell you, you miss 100% of the chances you never take. 100%, right? And so this is one instance. We're not giving you a medication. We're not telling you to stop taking any medicines you're already taking. We're not telling you to get any kind of special surgery. All we're asking you to do is to fill out some questionnaires, to provide your urine and blood specimens, which I understand is your own personal information, your data, but I can tell you we are protecting it with the highest level of security. And I would say that you should have more concern about the cell phone you're carrying around than this information that we are collecting now. And again, we are doing everything to protect the information. That is the biggest risk at this point of this program, but I will tell you the encryption, the security that we are utilizing to try to make sure that we are protecting your information is really where it should be, but it's really over and beyond. So I want to say thank you again for your interest in our program. Hopefully we'll be able to talk about our progress again next year, but I will tell you, it's catching on because we already have 100,000 people participating. And I share it with you, many of them are people of color and people who have not had an opportunity to participate before. So with your guidance, with the information and feedback you're giving us, we really feel that we'll be able to build a program where truly all of us, literally and figuratively, can benefit. So thank you again for your time and attention. I really look forward to you continuing with our program and hopefully signing up to join us.
Well, briefly as we end, I want to say thank you, a final thank you as well. I'm Ron Bailey. I had the opportunity to serve as the 113th president of the National Medical Association, and now I have the honor to serve as the third chair of the board of the COBB, following within the giant footsteps of our founding chair of the board, Kayla Lorenzen, who's here, and our second chair of the board, Rodney Hood. You heard today really great work, I think, by our leader of the symposium, Dr. Heron. Really, I think everyone on the panel today really did outstanding work. Really points out, I think, the tremendous opportunity, the moment that the COBB has, really, I think, to bridge this gap. Concerns regarding health disparities, I think, are already, I think, our responsibility and I think our privilege as members of the NMA and I think leaders of our community. But I think the COBB has a tremendous opportunity going forward to really make this really work very well, I think, for our community going forward. We look forward to really rising to the level to really meet this responsibility for our organization and look forward to taking this challenge. Thank you so much for being with us today. To avail yourself of all the issues going forward, I think, with the exhibits and all of the receptions this evening. Be careful and look forward to all the things going forward tomorrow. The COBB board meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. Have a good evening.